Yes.
They want us to bring your vitamin C to UK. I'm not sure we can do that.
My vitamin C. No, you have to buy it from Amazon, from iHerb.com.
Yes. Oh, that's not very good, no.
Okay, that's going live. Just wanted to make sure it was on. All right,
Okay.
we're ready to go when you are.
I had a
Can I see
question.
this is what it's called, guys.
So you're going to go back and forth. It's fine if you don't want to put this thing on me. Oh, ask the people how the lens is.
How is the lens, Periscope? Well, there's no complaints, so presuming I'm okay.
All right, and we know they complain readily.
They'll tell us if it's not good.
Okay.
Yeah, they like it.
I hear a little echo of my voice somewhere.
Yeah, it's annoying.
Sorry, let me turn on the volume.
You
Okay,
tell
just
me
so
when.
You know, just heads up, not impressed with the UK right now at all with their stupid hepatitis edition. Hepatitis B, they will be knowing about that. Sorry.
Okay,
Is that everyone your talk?
we're live, guys.
Okay, so this is following up on the package inserts that I went over last week that have not yet been put on the YouTube, but are still probably available on the We Are Vaxxed page. I went over Ngerix from GlaxoSmithKline, and I went over Recombavax from Merck, those package inserts. So if you would like part one, you can go back to that. There's so much more to the hepatitis B vaccine introduction into the infant schedule, which is really what I'm focused on. Even though this vaccine technically was developed for intravenous drug abusers and people who have unsafe sex practices. So this is part two, and today there was, I became aware of this today. I don't know if this was just announced today, but the Public Health England put out a bulletin protecting and improving the nation's health, a vaccine update. I'm going to read this to you. This is good news that later this year, Infenrix Hexa, which is DTaP, diphtheria, tetanus, acellular pertussis / inactivated polio vaccine / Haemophilus influenza B vaccine / hepatitis B, will replace both Pediasel and Infenrix, which was just the without the hepatitis B. Okay, for primary baby immunizations. This change means that as well as providing protection against diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, and Haemophilus influenza B, babies will also be given protection against hepatitis B virus. Now, I'm going to bring you back up to where it says this is good news, because whenever I see that, I become concerned. Let me take you back a few years to a World Health Organization bulletin from March 1998. And in this bulletin it said, almost every day we hear about a new microbe inflicting a new syndrome on an unprepared population. To people outside the international vaccine community, that's bad news. But go down to the bottom square there, to people like me and my GPV colleagues, it's good news. Up to the right square, yes, indeed, the news for us in the vaccine business is good. And yes, we're human beings and have got to eat. And the continual emergence of new diseases means our jobs aren't likely to disappear in the near future. So to the World Health Organization and organizations like that, finding a new place to give vaccines is good news to them. Okay? They like disease, they like reasons to give vaccines. Their goal is not to peel back the vaccine schedule, it's to continue adding to it indefinitely. So here we have the new and improved UK infant vaccine schedule. And you can see at 8 weeks, this baby will get in one thigh diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, polio, Hib, and hepatitis B, and as Infenrix Hexa. In another thigh, it will get a pneumococcal vaccine, Prevnar 13. And I guess either the baby has to have 3 thighs or it will get 2 vaccines in one thigh. Now we're the meningococcal group B vaccine, which I'll be going over in the next week or so. And then we've got the rotavirus that goes into the mouth. Then at 12 weeks, it starts all over again. Infenrix Hexa, Rotarix, then at 16 weeks, another one. So we've basically starting at 2 months, 3 months, and 4 months, what I consider this ghastly vaccine schedule. So one can argue that at least it's not given on the day of birth, but boy, look what they do at 8 weeks of age. I'm just amazed that these infants survive at all.
They won't survive. They will not survive.
It's the death rate will go up. The NICU admission rate. This is just for your information. This is taken off of the package insert, just some of the components of the vaccine. Contains diphtheria toxoid, tetanus toxoid, pertussis toxoid, filamentous hemagglutinin, pertactin, that's all for the pertussis one, hepatitis B surface antigen, poliovirus, 3 types of poliovirus, Haemophilus influenza B, tetanus toxoid. Then over to the right, we have the non-medicinal ingredients, as if the other ones were medicinal: lactose, sodium chloride, aluminum adjuvant as aluminum salts, water for injection, residual formaldehyde, polysorbate 20 and 80, potassium chloride, disodium phosphate, neomycin sulfate, that's an antibiotic, polymyxin sulfate, another antibiotic, and aluminum phosphate. This is what you'll be injecting into your perfectly healthy, happy 8-week-old baby. And possibly your sick baby, because doctors seem to not have any problem giving vaccines to really sick babies that are already on antibiotics. And I will tell you, since I've been traveling with Polly, the pattern is the worst cases of brain damage happen in children who get their vaccines when they're on antibiotics and their guts are not in good health. So here's what I originally started to present to you, is because when I first started looking at this hepatitis B vaccine, I thought to myself, all right, what is the evidence that we really needed in the United States, that we really needed in the UK? What is the proof that it's safe, and why are we giving it to these newborn babies? And what I keep getting over and over from the CDC, which this is the paper from the CDC when they first were doing this to babies, and they basically say that yes, you know, if you're an adult and you contract hepatitis B, your chances of not being a chronic carrier are very high. And only a small amount, maybe 5%, end up being chronic carriers and having the complications, which include hepatocellular carcinoma, which isn't good, that's liver cancer, or fulminant hepatitis, another bad thing you don't want to happen. So they decided to give it to babies. And from what I understand, one of the reasons they decided to give it to babies is because the adults just weren't taking it. So babies, as I've seen in other medical articles, are available, and we can vaccinate them when we want to, because there they are in the hospital, they've just been born, or they're being brought back to the doctor's office, and we can vaccinate them because they're there. They can't fight back, they can't say we don't want it. The parents are told that they need it because your baby could die. Hepatitis B could be a terrible fulminant hepatitis in your baby. They could get liver cancer. And there is evidence that in the undeveloped world, where this hepatitis B is quite endemic, that when babies are born to mothers who are hepatitis B positive, active hepatitis B, okay, not healed up hepatitis B, but the chronic or acute active hepatitis, that the risk of those babies contracting the disease is quite high, and the risk of them going on to develop chronic infection, which means they can spread it around to other children or adults, or develop maybe in their 20s or 30s liver cancer. It's a real concern, but does it apply to the babies who are born of hepatitis B negative mothers to the degree that we should be giving it to every baby born in the developed world? That was my question when I set out to answer this. And I did have an open mind because, you know, if that's really the case, and it's quite alarming when you look at the statistics of the rates of contraction of this disease to babies that are born of mothers who have active disease, okay? Not disease that they've been infected with and dealt with immunologically. Active disease. It's a problem. So what is the problem in the United States? That was really what I first set out to answer, because those numbers are quite alarming. And this is what it says in the beginning. In the United States, children become infected with hepatitis B virus through a variety of means. And then they go on to say the risk of perinatal hepatitis B infection among infants born to hepatitis B infected mothers ranges from 10 to 85%. Isn't that a large, broad range? Depending on each mother's hepatitis B E antigen status. And then it says infants who become infected by perinatal transmission have a 90% risk of chronic infection, and up to 25% will die of chronic liver disease as adults. So I thought, well, that's terrible. Who would want that? Let's look at the references that they give. So I pulled every reference from these CDC recommendations. And sure enough, every single one, if you look at the bottom right, every single one comes from Asia. All of this data is coming out of a country that has a different epigenetic profile to many parents that are living in the UK and the United States. I know there are a lot of Asian people in the USA and the UK, but is it applicable? Why haven't they done these studies looking in the United States? Well, the reason they go to Asia is because hepatitis B is endemic in Asia, and it is passed to children in Asia. But what are the living conditions of these people that are being used as representatives why we should be vaccinating our perfectly healthy, fine newborn babies to hepatitis B negative mothers? So that's really what I wanted to find out. And I'm just going to skip out of here for a minute, and I don't have all day to go through this. I wish I did. And it's okay for the HD anew, because basically I'm just going to say, but every single paper I came up with, here's another one, Southeast Asian infants in Louisiana. That's one example. Here's another one, horizontal transmission of hepatitis B virus infection to United States-born children of Hmong refugees. These are the references they're using to apply to us. This is another one I'll get back to. Here's one, prevention of perinatal acquisition of hepatitis B virus carriage using vaccine, preliminary report of a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. It's out of China. Here's another one. This one comes from, hold on a second, I think I made some outlines here. This is one that came out of another one from China's, this is one I just showed you that talked about Taipei, Beasley. Here's another one, chronic hepatitis B and the healthy hepatitis B surface antigen carrier state. Here's one, vertical transmission of hepatitis B antigen in Taiwan. This is one that's referenced over and over again. It's from 1975. Here's another one, 7-year study of hepatitis B vaccine efficacy in infants born from an endemic area, Senegal. I just find this strange that this is what we're being given as evidence to back up vaccinating these babies in the United States and the UK. And I will refer you to those studies if you want to do a more in-depth study on your own. So there we go. When the mother is positive with active hepatitis, 90% of the infants become infected near or at the time of birth. Well, that's not applicable here. Well, how do we know what the status would be in a well-nourished baby who was breastfed and not vaccinated? Because I don't know that that's what's happening with these babies in Asia. I don't know the status of the mother's health, the nutritional status of the mother's health. I don't know how she got hepatitis B. And I don't know that those babies are vaccinated. They're given drugs at birth. So we don't know what it would be. That's my point, is that we don't know in the developed world what the outcome would be if all the situation was optimized, if those babies were getting vitamin C, if they were getting breast milk, if they were getting the optimal nutrition that they needed, and those mothers were getting optimal nutrition. I don't believe that the numbers would be that bad, but it doesn't matter what I believe. I want to take you back and show you some of the history regarding the danger of this vaccine. So let's just say it's very effective and we need it. I'm still questioning whether we need it to babies who are born of hepatitis B negative mothers. Now the argument is that, well, you know, we have all these people coming in, just like polio was only a plane ride away. Well, now hepatitis B is here because the Asian population and the endemic populations are coming to America, and those children are coming to daycare with the American children or with the UK children that don't have hepatitis B, and they can be biting each other and they can spread hepatitis B. I've yet to see the data that shows that happens. However, in households where hepatitis B exists in the chronic form, yes, there is transmission within households. So an older child can infect a younger child if that older child did not recover from the disease adequately. But still, this doesn't apply to most of the population here in the United States. Well, this lady is somebody that everybody should know, Dr. Bonnie Dunbar. And she testified in the USA Senate in 1999. This lady worked in vaccine research. She had her own lab. She said she'd been honored by the National Institutes of Health as the first Margaret Pittman lecturer for her pioneering work in vaccine development. And one of the things she said I use in my infant immunity talks, because this is something parents need to understand. And she says, I would challenge any colleague, clinician, or research scientist to claim that we have a basic understanding of the human newborn immune system. It is well established in studies in animal models that the newborn immune system is very distinct from the adolescent or adult. In fact, the immune system of newborns in animal models can easily be perturbed to ensure that it cannot respond properly later in life. And I go through that in the Infant Immunity series on YouTube. She goes on to further say that any peptide or full length of or truncated protein produced from a biological source or using recombinant DNA technology, that's how hepatitis B vaccines are made, when introduced into the body will be processed by the immune system, and depending on the nature of that protein could result in long-term autoimmune reactions. So this is a reality in terms of what happens to adults that are given this vaccine. She went on to say, I have this paper and I actually want to give it to Anu to upload on the site because it's a very long, detailed paper that she wrote. It's well documented that committee members advising the CDC and members of organizations such as the American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization obtain substantial funding from pharmaceutical companies. Okay, this is an insider. This lady's developing vaccines at Baylor College. Okay, she's not, your fringe hippie tree-hugging, quack mom. Furthermore, it is well documented that investigators who have carried out clinical trials on this vaccine also benefit personally and obtain laboratory funding as consultants promoting the vaccine and as expert witness in legal conflicts. So she's basically saying, I'm not coming at this from this point of view. I'm coming at this from a laboratory investigator who has a serious concern about this vaccine. And the reason we're not hearing this from other laboratory investigators is because they have conflicts of interest. She goes on to say, it is also documented that lobbyists who consult for pharmaceutical companies are the same lobbyists for medical health care providers. I leave it up to this distinguished committee to investigate and evaluate the seriousness of these apparent conflicts of interest. However, it is also apparent to me that the lack of government funding specified for independent scientists to evaluate adverse vaccine reactions is a major reason for scientists to seek funding for experiments dictated by pharmaceutical companies. Adequate long-term follow-up information was not collected in clinical trials for this vaccine. She was upset about the hepatitis B vaccine. Why was she upset? Because her brother had a serious reaction to it, and 2 of her laboratory employees had a serious reaction to it. They developed autoimmune diseases. And so what she was asking for at this point was for there to be funding looking at the predisposition in a person's immune system and their white blood cells or their genetics that could show us who would react bad to the infection and who would react bad to the vaccine. So to her, that was a logical step to take, rather than just vaccinating every human being starting at birth. So she broke down the numbers as far as what the pre-vaccine era risk was of developing fulminant hepatitis, cirrhosis, carcinoma, or death. And what she said is the worst case scenario, because she said that the information was so, the data that you could find was so splayed that it ranged anywhere from 14,000 cases per year to 300,000 cases per year. Okay? She called it the broad range of estimated cases. So I'm just going to read what she wrote here. Estimation of the risk of contracting hepatitis B in the U.S. It is commonly reported by drug company brochures and Center for Disease Control publications that there are 200 to 300 cases of hepatitis B per year in the United States. And we see this with influenza, 30,000 deaths per year. And we go to look at the real numbers and it's not there. And then she says there are arguments on the internet attributed to Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report argue that the number of cases may be lower. In this reference, it is reported that in 1992, there were 358 reports of hepatitis B in New York City, 400 in upstate New York, and only 13,857 cases nationwide. So where does this 300,000 per year come from? Probably Asia. That's what I'm guessing. So in the United States, so we can look at the best case column, I think. That's a better picture of reality, according to Dr. Dunbar. And so she says these are the amount of cases. It's either 300,000 or 14,000. The next line shows how many recovered, 250,000, 11,500, 200, basically saying 83% of people infected were fully recovered. And this is actual data. This isn't projected or anything like that. This is the data. Healthy carriers, so she says, would be 10% of these people would be walking around without disease and they would still be healthy and could spread it. And then the people who developed fulminant hepatitis, cirrhosis, carcinoma, and death were 0.83%, or 116 people that year, or 2,500 in worst case scenario. That is the estimated risk of serious illness or death. Looking at the USA population, 0.000044%, or worst case scenario, 0.0009%. Okay, hold that thought for a minute. We'll go to the next slide. Now let's compare that with the adverse reactions that they knew about to this vaccine before they introduced it into the pediatric population. She said, this private investigator has obtained from the FDA a list of adverse reactions reported for Merck's Recombavax HB vaccine from 1990 through part of 1996. Over 7,000 adverse reactions were listed. My math says that's 1,200 per year. It has been informally estimated that there may actually be upwards of 30,000 adverse reaction reports for both the Merck Recombavax and the SmithKline Engerix vaccines. That's 5,000 per year. Because the FDA reports that these adverse reactions constitute only 10% of adverse reactions, it can be assumed that there may be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of adverse reactions to these vaccines per date. And she goes on in this paper to describe the science that does exist regarding the autoimmunity and how we could actually identify these people before we give them a vaccine. Well, I'll tell you that Bonnie Dunbar is no longer doing the work that she did. I think she realized how dark and heavy of a force was upon her, and she doesn't even live in the United States anymore, and I don't even think she's involved in science anymore. This is what happens when scientists go to the bench and try to do research looking at the actual biology of what these vaccines do to people, and they're met with new CDC studies that basically bury them, that one of them of which is outlined in the Vaxxed movie. I can tell you that Dr. V.K. Singh went to Congress asking for money to look at who was susceptible to developing brain damage before taking MMR vaccines. Not to stop the MMR vaccine, but let's find out who's more susceptible, because we have the technology to do this, if you don't know. He's no longer doing that kind of research. He didn't get funding. Dr. Stephen Walker at Wake Forest University, same deal. He found vaccine-strained measles in the guts of autistic patients. He ran out of funding, and I think he ran scared as well. So this is what happens when the bench research is done. It's replaced by epidemiology that says, look at this, we're vaccinating, we're showing this great response rate regarding the decline in whatever disease. But meanwhile, we're seeing autism going through the roof. We're seeing autoimmune diseases going through the roof. We're seeing a childhood population that's now having to be medicated in order to keep some of them alive. Type 1 diabetes. Something is seriously wrong. Let's look at some of the science that we know about. So I'm just going to give you a quick tutorial on epigenetics. If you've never heard one of my talks, this is something that you need to just have a peripheral understanding of. So what you're looking at the bottom right is a chromosome that's all wrapped up. Okay, this is what how the chromosome pretty much lives inside of your cells. You've got 46 of those, and they basically are the library for how your life cellular performance will be. And how that library functions depends on what books are open in that library. So you can see it uncoils, it unwinds more and more and more, and then those pages of the books are read, and it's translated into proteins that are in your body that can become enzymes or tissues. So anything that your cell surfaces are exposed to can change how these epigenetic mechanisms occur. And so 3 of the ways that we know are by putting methyl groups onto certain areas of these books, I'll call them, or modifying the DNA, modifying the histones, or there are also something called non-coding interference microRNAs that can change which books are open and how they're read, and what time of your life they're read. So it's all set out. For instance, when you're an infant, your immune system is epigenetically programmed to be anti-inflammatory. And then later, as you get older, you're epigenetically changed to have slightly higher levels of inflammation. If you're a pregnant woman, you're epigenetically programmed to be less inflammatory as well, so you don't reject the fetus. So everything we do is pretty much epigenetic. So here's another paper that might be of interest, of Gill 2015, and this one talks about how we all have public specificities, but we're each unique. So it's basically like saying we all have noses and mouths, and we all have fingerprints, but our noses and our mouths and our fingerprints are different. So what makes a different difference are these private specificities, and that involves thousands of various genes that are turned on or off, okay? Just to kind of backpedal a little bit, you know, it would be nice if I could tell you about all the research that's been done regarding hepatitis B and epigenetics, and I'll get to that. But I just want to bring you back to the beginning of when people first started to look at this. It was in Africa when they were giving the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine. And a researcher there named Dr. Peter Abbey, A-A-B-Y, noticed that there was a much higher death toll on the children who received the DTP vaccine than the children who just received measles vaccine or the children who received live vaccines plus the DTP. That there was a twofold death increase. And that's been very well established in these medical articles that I'm putting here. But he recently did a reevaluation because in the initial studies, what happened were that the unvaccinated kids were the ones that were sickest and had malnutrition. They weren't actually given their vaccines because they were so sick. So he went and he did a reevaluation of equally nourished children. And what he found in the data from 1981 to 1983, looking at 1,057 children, and he compared them to the unvaccinated children, he found that if these children got DPT plus oral polio vaccine, their hazard ratio, meaning their death rate, was 5 times higher than those who didn't get a vaccine. If they got DTP alone and no oral polio vaccine, compared to the children who weren't vaccinated and were equally nourished, the death rate was 10 times higher. So that tells you there's something about the killed vaccines, the DPT, the aluminum containing, at that point mercury containing as well, vaccines, that is doing something different to these kids than the live viral vaccines is. And he summarized by saying, all currently available evidence suggests that DTP vaccine may kill more children from other causes than it saves from diphtheria, tetanus, or pertussis. Wow. Commit that to memory, please, because that's huge. So how does it apply to other vaccines that are subunit vaccines, aluminum-containing vaccines, and that we're giving to these young infants? And who's looking? Because I'll tell you that Dr. Abbey has been met with nothing but headache from the World Health Organization, who has been trying all different kinds of ways to skew his data and prove him wrong. And I have to give him a hats off, because he just keeps coming back and showing them, no, you're wrong, and this is the data, and this is how you interpreted it wrong. And I hope that he continues going with what he's doing. This is another article that he was a co-author on from 2013, because they wanted to look at the epigenetic differences in these African girls, because the girls were dying at a higher rate than the boys. So they took 8 girls and they looked at their epigenetic profile before the vaccine, the DPT vaccine, and then they looked at it again after the DPT vaccine. And the full article shows you a lot more than this. It showed that they all reacted differently. But I just want to point out a few things, and that is that there were genetic disorder genes opened up, cell death genes, GI disease, developmental disorders, metabolism of drug and food genes were changed, cardiovascular disease, immunological disease genes were upregulated, connective tissue disorders, cell signaling rather. How our cells talk to each other is hugely important in how our body functions, and in energy production. So there was a significant epigenetic effect that this vaccine had. Now, what component of it was it that had the epigenetic effect? I can't tell you for sure, but I'll tell you there was another study very similar to this. This is out of Sweden by Ladenpera. And this was done after infants received their DTaP, polio, and Hib at 3 and 5 months. Okay, that's like half of what the their blood, and they stimulated it in a petri dish with pertussis toxin. They looked to see what happened 12 hours later. 33 allergy genes were activated, 66 asthma-related genes were activated, 67 cancer genes were upregulated, and 25 immunological genes were upregulated. I find this alarming. I don't know why nobody else is talking about this, but I pull this slide up and this article up whenever I get a chance. So, what about hepatitis B vaccines? Well, we do have some information about hepatitis B vaccines. This is an article by Hamza from 2012. And one of the quotes in the article, which I'll get into the details in a minute, that says that hepatitis B vaccines have several side effects that are caused by the aluminum adjuvant. We confirmed by quantitative RT-PCR polymerase chain reaction that hepatitis B vaccine changed the expression level of 7 genes that were selected biomarkers. Now, this just means the genes that they selected to look at, okay? They looked at liver-related genes, which reflected subtoxic adverse effects of the vaccine, especially subtle liver injury. Let's look a little closer. This is the study here. They used mice injected with recombinant hepatitis B vaccine. That's the one that we use today. They looked at 144 liver genes they found changed after 1 day. 52 were downregulated, 92 were upregulated, and then they took 7 of them to examine more closely. They saw that 2 inflammation genes were upregulated, 2 acute phase inflammation proteins were upregulated, 1 for gluconeogenesis, that means making new sugars, were upregulated, and 2 for bile acid synthesis were downregulated. Here's another study by Garley in 2004. This is actually on humans. And they looked at 6,399 children who got the measles vaccine and 876 children who got the measles vaccine and 3 doses of hepatitis B vaccine, and looked at the difference. They followed them till 2 years of age. The measles vaccine group that did not receive the hepatitis B vaccine had a mortality risk of 0.97. So it means there really was not much of a difference in the life and death situation for these people, maybe 0.3% advantage. When they looked at the hepatitis B vaccine plus the measles vaccine and compared it to the measles vaccine only, at 7.5 months, this is a short term, the mortality risk was 1.62. Okay, so if you have a mortality risk of 1 or less, that shows that there was a benefit to the vaccine. If it's 1 or higher, there was a detriment. That's a pretty significant, it's about a 60% increase of the mortality risk. At 7.5 to 12 months, the mortality risk was 1.81. So there's something going on here in terms of the hepatitis B vaccine. And this needs to be looked at more closely, and we certainly shouldn't be throwing it into healthy infants, knowing what we know about it. Here's another one by Coberly in 1996. 225 USA infants were given hepatitis B vaccine at different doses to see if they would respond better to one dose versus another. Because infants don't respond very well to vaccinations a lot of the time because their immune systems are programmed epigenetically to be anti-inflammatory. So the solution is always to give more or to give higher doses of aluminum. So they had some infants that received the higher dose. The 10 microgram dose had statistically significant growth retardation. That's a nonspecific event. Growth and weight data before and after vaccination is almost never reported in infant vaccine studies. And I can guarantee you that there's been no study done like this looking at the difference between the unvaccinated versus 1 vaccine, 2 vaccine, 3 vaccine, 8 vaccines at 2 months of age. Yet we know that epigenetically changes are occurring that can portend to very bad things into the future. Orntoft, getting back to Orntoft, this quote, "The immunological explanation for the non-specific effects of vaccines is not known at present." They don't know what they're doing. You know, they just look at very superficial indices and forget the deeper levels at which these vaccines are working, deny the deeper levels, deny the research that exists, deny the scientists that have come forth in the past pleading to look at this more closely, and they continue to add vaccines to the schedule. Well, in case you missed my last talk, I decided I would end just by reviewing the vaccine viral escape information, because now that we're giving more vaccines, we have the potential to see more vaccine viral escape occurring. So what is it? It's just the same as what happens when you have bacteria that reproduce and outsmart the antibiotics. The same thing can be happening with vaccination, and it is happening with hepatitis B vaccines. It's very well documented. I'm just giving you 2 of many articles, but here it says hepatitis B mutations are leading to vaccine failure. That means that that if you're infected with one of these hepatitis B mutants, that the way your blood was programmed by that vaccine won't help you. It also means that detection in the blood supply is not as good as it is when they're looking for the wild type hepatitis B viruses. Under selective pressure from the host immune response and/or antiviral therapy, viruses with mutations emerge as the dominant viral population. If you're not frightened about this, you just haven't been paying attention. Selection of mutated hepatitis B virus by host immunity and antiviral therapy. A number of well-characterized hepatitis B mutations have been recognized, leading to vaccine failure, loss of hepatitis B viral detection by diagnostic assays, that means in the blood supply, increased viral replication leading to hepatic damage and resistance to antiviral agents. Here's another article that I went over the other night. This one's Michael Purdy from Asian Journal of Transfusion Science. And this is, look, Asia is where the hepatitis B research is going on, people. So if someone wants to challenge me and say it's not the Lancet, go to where the action is happening. Occult infections began to be noted in the late 1980s, and the first case of a vaccine-induced escape mutant in a child in southern Italy who received passive-active post-exposure immunization was described in 1990. Occult infections create public health concerns because asymptomatic carriers can be blood donors. These mutations are stable and can be transmitted horizontally and vertically. That means your kids can give it to each other, and your kids can give it to you, and you can give it to your kids. Vaccination and the administration of hepatitis B immune globulin and antiviral drugs like lamivudine exert evolutionary pressures to select mutants. That's what I was talking about. The same thing happens with antibiotic resistance. And we know they're running out of antibiotics for certain microbes. And I'm just going to end with this last slide. Research with childhood vaccination shows that mutations accumulate with higher frequency in vaccinated than unvaccinated children. Hello? Put this all together. UK, who's in charge over there? People, you people that are listening to this. I don't care if you're someone without a university degree. Put this together. Do something at a local level. Educate people, because it's not mandated in UK. You don't have to take this to your babies until you understand what's going on here, to your healthy babies. Vaccinated children generated a preferential accumulation of mutations in the second loop of this certain gene, while unvaccinated children generated random mutations. Okay, so the information is here, the mutations are happening, the safety is largely unknown, but what we do know, there are major problems with the vaccine. Autoimmune diseases are a reality. You know, we interviewed a lady yesterday with one of the most severely vaccine injured people I've seen. He's 19 years old. He got his first, the mother was hepatitis B negative. She was tested. And they gave that baby a hepatitis B vaccine within hours of its birth. Its belly swelled up. She showed the picture of the belly afterwards. Everybody told her it was just colic, it was no problem. They continued vaccinating him. He got the illnesses like the African children, except he didn't die. He got pneumonias, ear infections. He was constantly on antibiotics. They kept vaccinating him, kept giving him fever reducers. He went in for his MMR vaccine sick, on fever reducers, on steroid, on antibiotics. The mother said, "Are you sure? This doesn't seem right." The doctor said, "Yes, everything's good. Put that MMR in." The lights went out. And I'll tell you, though, that mother and that grandmother have one heck of a problem on their hands, and I feel really bad for them, and I feel really angry when I hear about what these ignorant doctors did to this child. How can you even intuitively think that you can put a vaccine into a child that's on antibiotics, that's already sick? That to me shows that doctors truly don't know what vaccines are and what effect they have in the body. And this, the worst of the stories are just like this. But any vaccine, even one vaccine, can cause autoimmunity. There's medical evidence to show this. You can have allo antibodies, meaning if you get a transplant, your transplant rate could be worse. You can have auto antibodies, and you can have all these epigenetic effects that who knows what the full scope of them are. I don't know. Nobody knows, because they've only looked at little bits, and the funding doesn't go there, just like Dr. Bonnie Dunbar said. So with that, I would like Polly to say a few words about the UK and what she thinks.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to say this, okay? Thank you to Dr. Suzanne. She does not get paid on this bus. You need to know that. She works really hard on the bus while we're driving and all times to put this information together. Because I'm telling you, you out there that are watching this now with vaccinated children like my Billy, or children that have died, you know what's about to happen in the UK. Babies are going to die. Brains are going to be murdered. We know because we've lived it. My son only had the MMR and he was 13 months old. That's an 8-week-old baby. We know what's going to happen. So we have to do this. Okay, I believe we are winning this. Despite things like this, I do believe we're winning this. This is the dark side. Now we have to take action and we have to protect our sisters and brothers over in the UK. So I want you to take this video either from We Are Vaxxed or Periscope, because it's going to take too long for this to be edited. We'll deal with that when it's edited on Vax TV. And I want you to share it with every UK friend or person you know. I want you to share it on your Facebook page or any social media that you've got, or all the UK groups. Everybody you know. I don't want to hear that they think you're crazy. I don't want to hear that you're going to lose friends. I do not want you to live in fear, because if you do live by all these... I've been speaking to the UK a lot today. I had a call with them, and some of them are anxious. Oh, I'm scared of this person. I'm scared my family member won't like me. You know what, guys? Put that aside. We are the family now. We are the people moving this forward. Vax can't do it on their own. You guys built Vax up to where it is now, and I need you to now take this and take it over to the UK to save the babies, save the future generation, because these people are murderous and they're bullies. We know babies are going to die from this vaccine schedule. We know it. So people, do the thing you know best. Forget the fear of who likes you and who doesn't. We don't care. Are you going to lose your job? Are you going to lose your house? Who cares? Come and pitch your tents and cars out on the Autism Trust land. I don't care what we do. We just got to stop this now. So we're building an army. Scary word. Not afraid. That's what we're doing, because we're building an army against vaccines which are murdering our children. No more. As Suzanne said, that boy yesterday, which actually is not the worst I've seen. I've seen worse than that, and I've seen a lot of what we saw yesterday. These people need futures, and I want our attention on building that. But for now, we stop the babies. So everybody into action and get out there and share it. And also pin your story to the top. Everybody whose babies has died from vaccine injury, the Bundys and all of those people, pin your story to the top and share it everywhere. Do not let that come from the top of your Facebook. We are not going away. We are more powerful than we've ever been because we're united. We've never been united like we are now. So come on, let's do what we do best. Pray big, big time. Don't want to hear from you if you're not into your pray big thing. You can do what you like, but don't send us emails about it. We're not interested. We know who our boss is. So get going, people. Share Suzanne, Dr. Suzanne's. There's no coincidence that Dr. Suzanne's on the bus traveling around here, and now we're going to go worldwide. She's here for a reason. There's no better doctor. Okay, people? So be brave, get out there and do what we do best, and share this with everyone. Go and save those UK babies, because those UK babies, you know what, are going to die, and you know the pain. You know the pain of the parents and the siblings and everyone that's affected with the death of a baby or the death of a child or someone you love, and the murdering of the brains like my Billy and your kids out there. It stops now. Okay, team? Let's go and do what we do best. Share this everywhere. I love you guys.
Anu, do you have anything to add?